is Will Rutherford, and I'll be speaking on how to start a podcast. Now, if any of you are here for tech advice, or cost, or what model of microphone to use, I will be useless to you. Entirely useless. I am not the tech guy on our show. If push comes to shove and our tech guy's gone, I can run it, but that doesn't mean I know what I'm doing. What I'm here to tell you about is how to creatively start a podcast. Because people will start podcasts, they'll do it for a month, they'll do it for a month and a half, and it'll fizzle. Either they won't get enough listeners and they'll get frustrated, or they'll run out of topic, or they'll decide that they're too busy to do it, anything along that. And my goal is to help you avoid that scenario. And the best thing that I can come up with to avoid that scenario is there are commandments of starting a podcast. Now, commandment number 1, know thyself. Yes, sir.
Is there going to be a quiz on this?
Yes.
Okay.
So you pay attention to take notes. Know thyself. You have to know what you are capable of. You have to know what you like. You have to know what you're willing to do, the effort that you're willing to put forth. Because if you don't know that, you're dead in the water. You can't get into, say you start a podcast and you want to start a podcast about cooking, but you don't necessarily like cooking. You're dead in the water right off the bat. You know, it's a simple thing, it's a common sense thing, it's something that people overlook, and that's why you get podcasts that are dead and podcasts that, you know, just kind of come and go instead of it with any sustainability. So that's rule number 1, know yourself. Now, rule number 2, know your topic. Like I said, you do a podcast about cooking, you don't like cooking, dead in the water. It has to be something you're passionate about, something that means something to you. I do a podcast called The Wrestling Mayhem Show. We're coming up on our 100th episode at the end of this year. I absolutely love wrestling. I loved it since I was a kid, so I'm going to share it with my grandfather. Sword back there does the show with me. He too loves wrestling. We have 2 other guys on the show. They are, again, some of the most passionate wrestling fans I've ever met in my entire life. They love it, they're intelligent. So it has to be something that you know that you want to do. Something that you can stand and talk about for an hour, a half hour, 2 hours, every week, or however often you decide to have your podcast. Rule number 3, know your audience. Now, this is more something I've learned through personal experience and also through attending the Art Institute. It's very much advertising. You have to know about your demographic, who you're reaching out to, who's going to be listening to this podcast. Is it going to be housewives, middle-aged housewives? Is it going to be teenagers in high school? Is it going to be grade schoolers? Is it going to be college kids? And once you find out, either through research as to what your topic attracts, or through personal experience, interaction with the fans, finding out who they are, once you find that out, do the research. Find out. Go into things. Find out what they like. Find out what appeals to them. And don't be afraid to tailor your show to them, because you're making content for somebody else. Granted, you are making the show because it's something you enjoy and it's partly for yourself, but the content you're making is ultimately for someone else's consumption. So it has to be tailor-made to your audience. Now, as far as my personal experience goes, it has been very trial and error, and that's why I feel that I can stand up here and speak to you guys, because at the Wrestling Mayhem Show, we've had some intensely loyal fans. The whole second half of our show is dedicated to fan interaction. We've also lost some fans along the way for various reasons, either because we weren't holding their interest, or because we weren't nice to them. There's, like I said, there's 4 guys on the show, and we had this one fan, and the one guy seemed to have a vendetta against him, and would always make fun of him and everything like that. Definitely don't recommend anything along those lines, because it started out in good fun, but I actually forgot where I was going with that. Oh, the fans.
So what did they? You've been picking on that guy for years now. Did he stop coming by?
Yeah, he definitely stopped listening to the show. Yeah, he
was a glutton for punishment for many episodes.
For a good long time, yeah, a number of months. He would tune in, and we would all like pick fun of him and stuff like that. He'd pick fun back. The one guy on the show was just absolutely relevant to this guy. So and you would tear into him. The fan would write back and do all that, and then eventually the fan just got fed up and sent in some hate mail, and that went back and forth for a while. It's big mess. So, but the point of all that is to keep your fans. I always say this, and I said it in the last panel I did. If you're good to the fans are going to be good to you. Like the second half of our podcast is all about fan interaction. They send us letters, they talk to us, and we read them on the air. We discuss the points they make. We validate their opinions, and as a result of that, they stick around. They become very, very loyal fans. We have fans that write us huge, long emails every week because they know that we're going to read them and we actually care about their opinion.
How long is your show and how often?
Every Tuesday night for 2 hours. And
is it structured, the entire show, or like you said, the last half is dedicated fan interaction?
It's not so much structured.
But you have, like you said, the last half is dedicated to fan interaction. And then
that's about as close to structuring as we get. We always wait till after the break to read the fan mail.
Yeah.
That's it. We the way we handle it is we get a good idea of what we want to say because all of us watch wrestling. We all formulate our opinions throughout the week, and then when we show up on Tuesday, a lot of us usually get there early, and we have conversations about what we saw throughout the week, and then we go on the show. And we basically have the same conversations on the air. But they kind of snowball and they're a little more intense because another good thing I can tell you, if you're starting a podcast and comedy's involved, taking your personality and ratcheting it up to like 11 is usually a good way to attract listeners because it's not just the same humdrum you get everywhere. It's something interesting. It's something different. So, again, I was going somewhere.
You're talking about fans.
The fan interaction. Something else we mentioned on the other panel was we had a fan flying from London. He's a doctor in London, listened to our show, enjoyed it, flew in, spent a weekend with us, and just hung out. He slept. Our studio is at Swords, and he slept on the couch we have in the studio. And that was just absolutely incredible. I mean, he did it because he started as a fan, and we became friends. You know what I mean? So, and if you do have a topic like ours that involves where you have the opportunity for interviews, then the interviewees are very similar to the fans. If you treat them well, they'll treat you well in return. We have a lot of wrestlers that we have to interview. And we go to the shows, we go to the after parties, we talk to them, we actually have become friends with a number of the wrestlers. And so they come back. And we've had a couple of times when the wrestlers will just spend the whole time on the show with us. They'll be there for the whole 2 hours and just talk and converse with us. So,
are these wrestlers just any federation like TNA or WWE or just at RAM?
Mainly we get the smaller time local federations because it's very difficult to get to the higher ups because you have to go through all the kind of channels and we haven't become a large enough podcast to get that kind of exposure.
So you work with mostly the smaller,
yes,
the small ones, the lesser known.
Exactly. But that being said, we are one of the smaller podcasts. We don't let that discourage us because if you're going to start a podcast, it's not gonna take off like a rocket. You're not gonna start out with 300, 400, 12,000 listeners. That's not gonna happen. We started with 3 live listeners, that was it. And it very, very, very slowly moved up from there. If you stick with it, if you do find a topic that you love, something you're passionate about, and something that you can speak on in such a way that people don't think you're just completely an idiot, then it can become something larger. We have like 500-600 downloads every week, or it's some larger numbers.
Hundreds.
Much
It's in the
larger.
hundreds.
Yeah. It's gone steadily up since we started. And like I said, go back and listen to our first shows, they weren't even very good. And I'm not surprised we had 3 or 4 live listeners. But learn from the mistakes that you have, and just kind of grow from there. Cut away what doesn't work, keep what does work, and move on. Now, go ahead.
I meant to ask this the last session. I was having too much fun watching you guys beat on each other. A couple of examples of this, things you were doing early on that you cut out later because they weren't working. What were some of the mistakes you made initially that you found weren't working?
Well, a lot of the mistakes we made were not having topics, because it started out just 2 of us in the studio, and now that there's 4 of us, if somebody just completely falls by the wayside, there's always somebody else there to pick it back up. And we would go into shows completely blind. Now, like I said before, we don't go in with exactly plans or anything like that, but we would go into shows with absolutely no thought as to what to do, whatsoever. A lot of the other mistakes we made. Sorry?
I'd like to bring up, I believe his name was Tommy Thompson,
Oh, yeah.
our SmackDown correspondent one time.
From time to time you get a bad skit. You get bad skits and bad content, stuff like that. Very much listen to feedback from the fans, because they won't lie to you because they really have no reason to. So, some of the other things we, like various advertising things, like either we didn't advertise or we didn't advertise enough. But like I said, the whole thing's a learning process. That's why we're here, because we're not here to just teach panels, we're also attending panels. And you have to learn as to how to make things more successful and build on it.
How do you tell people in the internet world, not in the local world, about your blog? How do they get to know it?
Mainly I found word of mouth.
So
Word of
there's-
mouth works fantastically. Like
Okay.
events like this, if you tell 10 people about your blog here and they go and check it out, if they like it, they're going to tell more people. And it's the viral marketing that you hear everywhere. So word of mouth works absolutely fantastically. We spend very little to no money on advertising whatsoever.
The YouTube videos help too.
YouTube, yeah. For those the free websites, use and abuse those because that's what they're there for. We put so much content on YouTube because if we put like 20 hours, 30 hours, some ridiculous amount of content on YouTube.
Between all the projects, like on my personal YouTube account, there's at least 190 videos
Yeah.
of varying length for this show and for other projects that we work on.
But if we, say we put up 20 videos on YouTube. If we put up 20 videos and we get maybe 40 listeners out of that, it's time well spent. Because it goes back to the word of mouth, the viral marketing. If we get those 40 listeners and they like it, they'll tell people, and it's a little commercial. They tell 2 friends, and we tell 2 friends, and so yeah, exactly.
Hairspray. I know where you're going.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask from you guys is there anybody in here who is soon to be starting a podcast? Okay, what are your ideas for the podcast?
It's probably going to be about politics in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And we're going to probably just interview people who, read the newspaper and maybe get some more people, because a lot of, it's like, what are you doing? And then if we want, we'll be on the elected politicians, but we don't want just like sound bites and press releases. It's just like, yeah, we think this sucks, or, you know, I don't think he's telling you the truth. But we have to be careful about like slander and like, you know, keeping it short so people don't get bored and go making it interesting.
Okay, now is it just an interest in politics that?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, do you have any like previous connections or anything like that? You do? Okay. Well, then you're already better off than we were when we started, because we had zero connections.
We're just trying to figure out like how to approach it, you know, how to structure it, all the things we were talking about.
I see. Okay. Well,
Do you ever do video podcasts yet?
we're just getting started with that. We do we film skits, we do like mock commercials and stuff like that, but we have started broadcasting our show on Blog TV.
Okay.
And that's worked pretty well for us, because we'll have the live listeners, and we usually have like 4 or 5 people also in the Blog TV chat room. And like I said, most of our hits and our popularity comes from downloads from the podcast, but that absolutely helps, because for every day every show for 3 months, I would sit there, something would happen and say, why aren't we a video podcast? And to have that available to us now is fantastic. So I guess it depends on your topic, but from what you're telling me, I'd say maybe do like we do both audio and video. But maybe not necessarily at the same time, but I think it would help. It's best to use all the resources you have available to. Anybody else have a question? No upcoming podcast?
I'm looking at starting a Heroes podcast, actually.
Okay.
What do you think about that? I mean,
Well, with the Heroes podcast, it's a podcast that might not last for very long. TV shows get canceled, and popularity wanes. The wrestling show that we do it's almost a safe bet. It's been around for ages, and it doesn't look like it's going to be going away anytime soon. But like I said, popularity rises and falls and wanes for TV shows. So, I mean, do it. Just don't plan to make it permanent. You know?
I think one thing I've noticed too is that it's pretty much, when you say you're working with smaller federations, it's like an untapped market. That there's some guys, I'm sure some ladies who are pro wrestlers would like to, if they wanted a chance to either step up in the big leagues or probably even form their own federations, it could be like some kind of exposure for them, something to.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying about supporting your fans and supporting the people that work in the industry, because you get a lot of interviews that are just. Are you gesturing at all? You get a lot of interviews that are just because they're free publicity. So.
I have a question. So basically, we're going to come to most of this stuff. So you have your idea, you know what it is, you thought about your audience, you know where you're going to market it, and you know where you're headed with it. Steps 1, 2, and 3 in starting that podcast. Where do you go from there? In your life?
From there is actually doing you make sure you do have, even if it's just bare bones equipment, to be able to record it. Mm-hmm. And then you pick a server, someone who is either cheap or free.
Do you have one you suggest that's free?
TalkShoe's free. Yeah, we host on TalkShoe, TalkShoe.com. They're one of the companies that are sponsoring this.
Oh, cool. Sorry.
That's cool. They have free friends over. So, and then you just get started. And like I said, it's usually very rough in the beginning. It's always a grinding, slow start. But if it's something you really care about and you're willing to put forth enough effort, it can become something very much.
Can your customers go back and hear on like earlier podcasts, or is it just like Because I know I've listened to podcasts on iTunes, it was just like, okay, it's this week's podcast, this and that, but so they can go back to your very first podcast.
Yeah, TalkShoe posts archives, and before we went to TalkShoe, we used Switchbot, and Switchbot, I think, we still host some of the archives on Switchbot. Yeah, some of the older shows even before TalkShoe. So.
Do you guys have
Okay.
Do you guys have to worry about permissions? I know I work for a company, we do like online education, and we're starting a podcast, and we're talking with teachers and students, so we have to constantly be worrying about getting permissions. Do you have to worry about that with the wrestlers? Since, I mean, granted they're over 18, I'm sure, so
Yeah,
it's
well,
not an issue.
at the stage we're at now, since we're dealing with the smaller time local groups, we don't have to give the permission. However, certain groups like WWE and TNA, we absolutely have to go through management and get permission from management for that wrestler to do an interview with us. Now, it's always been that way with WWE. It just recently started that way with TNA because the wrestler went out and said whatever he wanted and got no comments from it. So we do have to go through the proper channels from time to time, but at the moment we don't have to worry about it.
Long-term wise, do you know your audience and you know sort of how many people are listening, or you definitely know how many people are listening every week?
Actually, that side of it is handled by him.
So you do know or you don't know?
Yeah, TalkShoe provides the numbers.
Okay.
And
I know what he tells me.
Okay, so you can find out how many people are actually listening, and if it's increasing every week.
Yeah.
So then, how long have you been doing this now? A year, you said?
a year and a half.
Year and a half? So if you look at the numbers and you can see how they've increased through the months, do you actually sit down and project what your goal is for the next 6 months? Like, how do you make it bigger, other than word of mouth, and knowing that you want you have a goal?
We really, like I said in the last panel, we're really a goalless podcast. We do this because we love it, and if people are listening, that's great. We're trying to figure out ways to expand ourselves, and actually we're in a lull right now, but our numbers have dropped a little bit because we didn't do anything. We haven't done any interviews for like 3 or 4 months, and we're trying to get back into it. It's just our personal lives and everything. We just haven't been able to dedicate enough time to it, and that's another factor you have to work into when you're doing a podcast, especially if it's spare time on top of all of our 9-to-5 jobs or school in some of our cases. And like we had one guy dedicated to contact wrestlers and get interviews, and he had problems, and we just didn't have anything for a while. Just kind of kept on with the show, and interest waned a little bit. So it's really. You gotta.
I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of you started with 3 listeners, and then let's just say you've got 250. I'm just throwing out a number, but let's say, you really do want to turn this into something much bigger, or let's say you even want to make it a career where you want to do the WWF or something much bigger. Then you kind of need to have not that you're necessarily doing that yourselves, but if I wanted to do something like that and wanted to grab a bigger audience, how would I project, or how do you?
Well, that's the next step for us.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten to this point, we've reached this plateau, and I know our personal lives have calmed down quite a bit. So that's part of the reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Why we're here at Podcamp, because we need to figure out what to do to take this to the next level.
We understand how to put on the show and what entertains people, and that's what we're talking about, because that's what we know. And I'm not the expert in the technical side of things, although I'm the one that does it on the show. A lot of guys here know a lot better as far as the community and driving traffic and all that stuff. That's what I'm still trying to learn, and that's why I still come to these things.
That's the Chris Brogan aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I read his blog all the time, trying to figure this stuff out. So.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Is there any advertising done on these blogs? Or on podcasts that you do?
That's one of the things that we've been looking into. I'll throw out some free advertising from time to time, just for local businesses and things like that. But we're in the process of contacting small businesses and seeing if they want to spend just small amounts of money. We'll throw out their name every week. Well, that's actually pretty much all I have. I'm going to wrap this up early. So I hope I helped at least a little bit. So I appreciate you guys coming out.
Especially the part, the basics of knowing yourself,